Hi Seema, it's been long. Finally, we're here. So I want to first congratulate you for the new role that you've got at GMAT.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great, great. So, how are things at GMAT, and how is everything going on? You're enjoying your work?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the best things. I think it's a fine balance between being able to kind of interact with the candidates and, really plan stuff, what would be best for them. So, I mean, yeah, I totally enjoy what I do from that regard. I think I'd always love education as a field. So,
No, no, no. And as the test prep companies, we've always seen you so motivated to be with us, get connected to us, and organizing all the events. So that's
I've
good.
come from there, so obviously it's like I think there's always a piece of me who's a bit of an academician and who connects with the candidates in that perspective, I suppose. I guess I kind of like get where you guys come from as well. So yeah, I'm glad that I'm able to.
No, no, that's brilliant. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I won't waste your time, and, I'll just quickly come up to few very common questions that, my students have been asking me, and
Mm.
people in my team have been asking me. So I just want to start with any, recent trends or updates in the GMAT exam format, or especially the scoring part, after the GMAT Focus Edition, that we as test prep companies should be aware of.
I think it's been almost. I mean, we've completed 1 year since the new version of the exam actually came into the picture. But there's been a lot of changes, all good changes when we actually look at the candidates and what they get to actually experience on the exam. Um, Basic, I think, foundations you already know with respect to the structure of the exam. But talking about the scoring, one of the points I would definitely like to actually address is
Mm-hmm.
the score has not gotten lower with respect to the new version of the GMAT exam. It's just been recalibrated, and the ideal way to actually compare the old score and the new score is just a percentile ranking, right? The concordance table is up there on the MBA.com. Another thing also is that this concordance, the percentile ranking actually keeps getting updated every year, and it has done so in the last 10 years. And we've been kind of, I think, more active in communicating that in the last year, because of which a lot of people thought that. It's something new that we've actually done, but that's something that's an ongoing process, and it'll keep continuing to get updated as more people actually take the exam. But one thing to kind of like rest assured is that the changes are going to be minimal. It's just like 1 or 2 percent differences between the scores, and that's going to get reflected in the report that the candidates will send to the business schools also. So
Mm-hmm.
if I've taken the test today and I've like sent the score, but I'm applying a year later, the school still has my score report, right?
Absolutely.
And that percentile update will happen, and the school will, it will be reflected in the report as well.
All right, perfect. So basically, a lot of my trainers, what they have been asking me is that, ma'am, it's been a year that we started with the GMAT Focus Edition. So the pattern that they decided with the scoring formats that they decided with when they started, and now when we stand after, almost 12, 13 months, is there any change that they have done that, we as a trainer should know before starting the classes, or, before giving all that information to the students about the scores? So it's been same, last few. Hmm.
So I think, couple of pointers that the students would have, and as a point to talk to people, right? I think definitely would be the fact that, not to get stuck on the actual scores. Like when you see 655, it's actually 91st percentile, all right? So I think that has to get communicated with the students who actually come to you guys. The other aspect is, as I said, one major thing that they should know about and be able to communicate to the students eventually is also the percentile updates as well. But apart from that, the GMAT, the way it functions, it's an adaptive algorithm which has a lot of nuances, and obviously it's proprietary, so a lot of it is not actually out there either. but it does take into consideration the difficulty matching as it did before, which is gradual over the course of the questions. It does take into account, let's say, the item position, description, and a lot more other factors in the way it actually works. So it's adaptive at best, and two different people actually go through entirely two different experiences as far as the exam is concerned, but each of the section contributes equally to the total score. I think that's the primary question that they will definitely come across, because
True.
I come across that as well, where candidates are asking, does one section contribute more to the total score, or the other section contribute to the overall score? It's way, it kind of contributes equally in that regard. And another thing is, I think the second question I'm sure that they would definitely encounter is also, do if I got two questions wrong, and let's say somebody else also gets two questions wrong, why do our scores look so different? And they will read it about somewhere, right? There's a lot of like forums and platforms,
Absolutely.
but then that's where they have to kind of like explain that the algorithm has a big role to play here, because it's not based on the number of questions that the scoring is actually working, but it's on the basis
Absolutely.
of all of the other factors that I just spoke about.
True, true, true. Last 18 years, we have actually seen so many trends in the GMAT, but there are few things which are constant. This is
Yeah.
very one of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The
And
two people
okay,
will always have two different experiences. I mean, no matter what the time is, but the algorithm is the same. I mean, it's working in the same manner for everybody.
absolutely, completely agree. So continuing with this, Seema, are there any specific sections or skills on the GMAT, because you have a team who's actually creating the questions, all the item numbers. So you see that, these are the item numbers where candidates commonly struggle. And, I mean, any suggestions you can give to a test prep companies to address these gaps?
So I think it's a continued learning process, because it's still like 1 year, and there's a mix in terms of the can what the candidates actually encounter. But I can definitely talk from the conversations I have had with the larger candidate pool of the people who have already taken the exam. So some people have found the quantitative reasoning easy, or some people have found the verbal reasoning easy, but that has been extremely subjective. All right,
Mhm.
the questions have not changed. The kind of questions that are tested have actually gone down with respect to the new version of the exam. But I think it's still quite mixed. But one common area where candidates should definitely put in some amount of effort is better time management, because the foundation level concepts are actually what it is. The foundation at it's just like grassroots level concepts, and then them being asked to actually apply those concepts, right? So there's nothing really complicated being tested in that regard. But let's say when it comes to data insights, one of the common challenges that I've heard candidates speak about is definitely managing their time. And in that, I think the most important thing, and I'm sure you will agree because you actually meet a lot of candidates, and you would be giving the same advice, is to make sure that when they do their practice, or when they go through the practice exam, to make sure that they are doing time practice, and make sure that they're maintaining the exact same environment that they're most likely to encounter on the actual exam. Make sure that they use their scratch work, and most importantly, find the approach that fits them the best, rather than pick up a approach that is like really common for everybody.
Absolutely, I completely agree, and this is, I think, a part of my every lecture. I mean, this is what I try and tell people that you have to follow your own approach, and I think practice is very important. And most of
Correct.
us, been teaching for these last 2 decades, we completely agree because a lot of people, they come up and they assume that they can be done in 15 days time or a 30 days time. So you
Exactly.
have to give your time to GMAT. You have to understand the patterns, and then you have to go on with all the things. And we have always seen that people are even they are always rushing towards the scores. That I will start
Exactly.
and I have to get a 705 or I have to get a 735. I'm like, hold on. Spend 1 month with GMAT, start loving GMAT, see how it's taking you, and then try and come to the target score.
I like the fact that you said start loving GMAT because I personally think that GMAT is a very fun exam if you actually understand the kind of concepts which are tested on it, which is your critical
True.
thinking skills and what I would actually recommend everybody, is to even if it be your team, right? To go through the official starter kit because they're going to get a
Seriously.
lot of insight from the amount of information, the foundation level concepts which are actually given there, like the inductive reasoning, the deductive reasoning, and the other aspects that's tested on the verbal reasoning, let's say, and what's actually tested on Kant. All the foundational concepts are actually literally laid out.
True.
It's given in a
I
very
agree. Yes.
straightforward manner also.
True. No, no, we always look forward for more and more material for the official, the GMAC, and we always look forward for all the question of the day and every other information that we get from the GMAC because that's actually going to give you a flavor of what exactly they are planning and what are the kind of new items they're going to add to the whole software. So,
So
Seema,
good thing. So I'm so sorry to cut you there, but then one good thing is with the new version when it came up, a lot of new items were actually added. So when you see practice exam one and practice exam two, when they retake the exam also, they're going to see new set of questions the second time around. So there's more free practice exams than just that one and two. When they retake it, they still get new questions. And then,
can you hear me? Okay. So moving on, Seema. Can
mhm.
we talk about the trends you see in the profiles or the demographics of the GMAT test takers? I mean, be it age, location, career background, school background. I mean, are they all from engineering background or are they all from finance background? I mean, any specific thing or it's more of holistic?
There's definitely a mix of candidates. There's definitely a lot of people coming from the engineering background that's always been on the high side. But what I would actually recommend everybody do is there's our geographic trends report, which is available on the GMAC.com website. Like, well, that's one of our research touch points. There's a lot of other research touch points also, like there's one on the Gen Z behavior and AI and numerous other things. The prospective student survey, the application trends survey that actually gives in probably a lot more than I can potentially cover.
Yes.
But there's definitely a lot of interest in the business masters program, especially when you look at the demographics here in India. But working professionals still are the highest, I would say, in terms of kind of like recognizing the need and going and taking the GMAT exam. But there's definitely, in terms of interest for an MBA versus the business masters, there's increasing interest. I would say that. The other thing is, I think interestingly for South Asian students, US still continues to be the top destination.
Yes,
But
destination. But it's a big one.
yeah, but according to, our research also, there's a lot of interest in the domestic programs, especially
Mhm.
for Indian candidates. Like more and more, students are actually looking towards home to do their MBA programs. It could be a lot of things. It could be a lot of situations, but there's definitely an increase. I mean, that's what the candidates are actually expressing in terms of what their future plans actually look like, at least in the coming
Mm.
year for sure. So that's a very interesting trend as well. And but then, of course, as I said, US, Europe, there's continued interest there, but there's increased
Continues,
interest.
definitely. And I think there's a huge list of the Indian universities also, who are accepting the GMAT. So, of
Correct.
course, thanks to the team. So, I'm sure a lot of people are considering this, because CAT being more tougher, more competitive happens only once in a year. So, we have a lot of students, now. I mean, this trend has recently came in for last 3, 4, 5 years that people come to us and they're only looking at the Indian colleges. So, Definitely the trend is changing.
So yeah, I mean that interest is something that we've seen quite a lot as well. I mean, we do end up speaking to a lot of people coming from the cat audience also. I think that people are definitely seeing more value in a global education. I mean that's always been the case, but I think it's continuing to do so. And while obviously looking at programs at home, I think schools like ISB and there's other programs like IMT, XLRI, and other schools actually use the GMAT exam, even SP Jain, TAPME, and all. So there are other options, and that the students can actually consider, and it's easy transition from a CAT to a GMAT. That's something that I actually speak to student whenever the student interactions also. That's something that we speak about, because GMAT, you know for a fact that it's a very structured examination, and
It is, it
the
is. It is one of
fun
the most
part
logical
is
exams, I would say.
correct, and there are no surprises.
Exactly.
You
Absolutely. There are
know,
no surprises. If you have practiced enough and if you're well prepared, then it is going to give you a good day. That's definitely there.
correct. Correct. So I think when cat or students come and ask me, or cat test takers come and ask me, like how do is it going to be tougher transitioning from this? I always say that you already done the tougher stuff. Um,
Absolutely. Even the
uh,
tougher.
so I think the toughness also comes in uncertainty with the way that they have to actually deal with the exam. But yeah, as I mentioned, you would know this best also, that it's such a structured examination. You just know the
Exactly.
format.
Maybe for few of the students, English part, we have students who find English little tougher. But I think it's tougher because it's more logical. When you look at
Correct.
the SAT English and when you look at the GMAT English, it's more logical and you need more of a deep understanding and that typical logic. If you have, it
Yeah.
becomes easy. So I've seen a lot of people
Only
coming
two
up and saying,
question types. I mean, I always say that there's just two question types, and let's say critical reasoning, if you learn that, is easy to transition into a reading comprehension. It's all about logic, and
it's
there's
all
like
about logic.
certain number of question types, let's say in reading comprehension, if you know exactly which question you have to deal with, whether it's the main idea question, or is it a part of the a fact, or information that they have to identify supporting the main idea, or is it application question. So the moment they know exactly what question that they're dealing with,
And
they know
that
exactly
comes
what
with
to do.
practice. Yes. And you just have to, I think one has to just do like maybe 150, 200, 250 questions to understand the pattern and it's just done.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, for sure, like that's something that's quite easy to transition for sure.
Mhm. And Seema, just one last question. What do you think is the role of the standardized exam like GMAT, evolving in the MBA admissions? Because I'm sure you have good MBA schools who are coming to you, and the experts are coming, talking to you people, talking about trends, and maybe that is one of the reasons that data insight became a part of the GMAT because the whole team, they spoke, and it was a very very important part. It actually spoke about all the logic that a person has. So,
Yeah.
how important are they?
So there are, I think there are multiple aspects to this particular answer. I know that on ground, I've heard a lot of people, I would rather say, a lot of people say that, oh, you don't need to take any examination. You just apply and get into schools. All the schools are giving waivers, and quite a common conversation. But I feel like, in these conversations, the nuances of those kind of things get lost a bit. Yes, that there are situations where the school may actually give waivers, but that also comes with a lot of conditions. It also comes with the question whether you, as a student, want a scholarship or not. Because that, if a school has to give you funding, you really have to make sure that you are showing them that you really deserve that funding. So GMAT is an eligibility criteria for most of the scholarships. So that becomes an important factor. The other thing is, to be competitive in terms of an admission, none of the schools have actually kind of like gotten rid of the assessment for an MBA program. It's just like if they really see some deserving candidates, and they have genuine issues, like they could request for that, but that they would probably have to write essays or provide other information that would help them get that waiver. So I think that's one point I would like to actually start with. The other aspect is the kind of information which is actually tested. I think there are a lot of quotes and articles on MBA.com also speaking about this, where
Absolutely.
business schools have spoken about how excited, like when we were eventually coming up with a new format, how excited they were about the data insights being there, because when we reduced the length of the examination, what we also did is remove all of the things that did not directly kind of like test on the logical aspect, or what the things that maybe the business school directly was not exactly looking for, and then according to the changing times and needs, right? And right now, if you look at the exam as it is, it's so fine tuned to really predict a candidate's success in a business school environment, because it literally tests the skills that are the most essential for somebody going into a business ambit. So I
Yes.
think these are the two aspects I would say that anybody who's looking to get into anything related to a master's in business, or whether it be a
Absolutely.
specialized master's or whether it be an MBA program, they have to understand that if they can't deal with GMAT, then how are they going to actually deal with a business school education? Because that's literally what they are going to encounter on a regular
Absolutely.
basis. And then
And
what about
again,
the career?
Bilkul. And you know what? I mean, this is something we actually, tell our students to motivate them that this is what you are going to do after your MBA. I mean, if you're given a problem, you have to look at the problem and see if you can solve it without actually solving it. So if you can't do
Correct.
that for GMAT, and if you can't do that in your MBA, then what is the purpose of doing the GMAT? So
Correct.
bingo, perfect. I mean, GMAT definitely right there on the day of the exam, you get to know that, what's the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sure.
That's true. No, no, no. Thank you. And it was, a big, good information for all our students and, everyone around. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. It's a pleasure. And I'm glad that we could actually go ahead and do this. So
Same,
I'm
same. And, we've been trying to coordinate this for almost like 4 or 5 months. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.